We begin this hour with breaking news in the war between Israel and Hamas. There is fighting again in Gaza, and the deal that freed hostages and detainees, as well as brought in a surge of humanitarian aid, that is over for now. This is video into us this morning from Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. It shows the aftermath from Israeli airstrikes that began just minutes after the deal expired. The Hamas-controlled Gaza Health Ministry says at least 35 people are dead and dozens more wounded. Israel's military is again urging Palestinians to prepare to evacuate parts of Gaza, and UN agencies are calling the renewed fighting catastrophic for civilians.
This is the biggest still functioning hospital in Gaza. It's at 200% capacity. Yes, this is a hospital. The health system here is overwhelmed. This hospital simply cannot take more children with the wounds of war. There are children everywhere. These children are sleeping. There was a bomb literally 50 meters from here.
We are already seeing thousands of people on the move in southern Gaza, pushed by airstrikes and the need to find somewhere safe to go. An estimated 2.2 million people are now in the southern half of Gaza, and the flow of urgently needed humanitarian relief is reportedly cut off again. Reuters is quoting Egyptian security officials as saying convoys of aid and fuel have been halted at the Rafah gate. Let's bring in our senior international correspondent, Margaret Evans, who is in Tel Aviv live for us. Margaret, that backdrop we know well now. That's the square where the families of hostages and their supporters have been gathering for many weeks now. Let's talk about that, where you are and what the feeling is there now that the deal that freed hostages has come to an end.
That's right, Heather. The mood here can really only be described as very subdued. We've touched base with this square occasionally over the past week during this pause. Different mood, hostages coming home and being released every day. Behind me, that big, long Shabbat table that is laid, waiting for hostages to come home. Families are understanding that's not going to be happening today. We have people here carrying pictures of their relatives, their loved ones, their friends, telling us their stories, difficult stories. I spoke with one man who has two brothers who've been taken hostage. One of those brothers lost his wife and two children to the Hamas attacks on October 7th. He says that brother, when he comes home, he hopes he will still come home, will have no idea that he's lost his family. We've talked to people who've said, we want to keep the pressure up on the Israeli government to make sure that the focus of the Israeli government remains on returning hostages, even though the fighting has begun. I also spoke with one woman, though, who said Hamas has been given its chance. It is stopped returning hostages, and now I don't care. Now we need to bring them home however we can. And for some people, that does mean supporting the Israeli conflict in Gaza. For some Israelis, they say they believe that's the only language that Hamas will understand. So incredibly difficult time for people grappling with what's going to come next. Should point out that at this time, we're still hearing that there are efforts from Qatar, from Egypt, to get the pause to resume if that's possible. But of course, the longer the fighting goes on, the possibility of that happening becomes much more difficult.
Margaret, before the fighting resumed, we heard from the Secretary of State for the United States, Antony Blinken, and he was urging Israel to do more to protect civilians in Gaza, using some strong language to do that. This morning, Israel's military is detailing a new plan, and I'm wondering what it involves and what it would mean overall.
Yeah, that's right, Heather. And Antony Blinken used language that I haven't heard him use before in terms of asking for those guarantees from Israel, saying the United States still remains firmly behind Israel's right to go after Hamas and to defend itself under what he described as international humanitarian law. But he also said this is one of the most sophisticated armies in the world. Direct message to the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying, you can do this, you can do more to secure and make civilians safe. We have been seeing today that the Israeli Air Force has been again dropping leaflets in parts of the Gaza Strip, basically urging Palestinians in certain areas to move, saying, you are now in a dangerous battleground, move, or you are certainly in danger. The Israeli government also says, or the Israel Defense Forces have also released a map that they say will alert people about safe areas they can move to. Have a listen to what the Israel government spokesman said this morning about what the plan is for trying to address those American concerns.
The IDF has published an evacuation zone map in Gaza, and we urge uninvolved civilians to evacuate along the designated routes away from these specific areas of Hamas terror activity for their own safety.
Of course, Heather, you have to remember that, as you said, Gaza has more than 2 million residents. There are electrical shortages during these periods of intense bombardment. People don't always have electricity. They won't have mobile phones. And a lot of people have been injured during the fighting before the pause. So that means that people who might have to move, a family in wheelchairs, small children, staying outside, will have enormous difficulty moving quickly enough. And we've already seen during this conflict that Israel has insisted that Palestinians move south. Many have, but that bombing continues in the south. So it's not an easy matter for many Palestinians to move quickly enough to avoid the ferocity of the war that seems to be now resuming.
Margaret, thank you very much. Margaret Evans, our senior international correspondent. She's in Tel Aviv.